And we are live.
Yay!
Hi guys, welcome back to Views with Verse, the series in which I interview different people about their views about deity. And joining me today I have Miss Kenzie Flame.
Hello!
And if you want to check out Miss Kenzie, all of her links are down below this video, so you can go check her out afterwards, and please do. So welcome to the channel, Kenzie.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Okay, so how I usually start this is a nice, simple, easy question, not at all. I ask people, how do they view deity? What does deity mean to you?
Oh, that is a hard question. Deity means energy, basically. Yeah, just simply energy. Everything is energy. Deity is energy too. And I think that we all have a little bit of deity inside of us too. So, yeah, energy, I would say.
And you work with the Morrigan?
Yeah, I do, to some extent. She's in her sort of silent period right now, I feel like. She was like really full on from the beginning, and then she just completely silent down. So,
yeah.
Yeah, so in meanwhile, I have been working with a lot of other deities actually, and it has been quite interesting. I've been working with like Hindu and Celtic, Norse, and yeah, it's just been sort of a journey so far, and it feels like she's like in the background lurking. I don't know, but yeah.
So you feel you have quite an eclectic, I don't know, approach to deity?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
And how would you address people who are like, no, you can only work with like one pantheon? Because I know that happens where some people are really set that if you're working with a particular pantheon, you can't be working with others. Do you how do you address that? Because if you work eclectically.
Yeah, I say there's no hinder to work across the pantheons at all. I mean, why would there be, like, why would it be not allowed to do that? Like, why? Deities are everywhere. There's lots of different deities. Why just keep to one pantheon? It doesn't make any sense. But if people want to do that, fine for them. And if they don't, fine for them. It's like, yeah, everything is allowed, I would say. Yeah.
Absolutely. So how have you found it? Have you found that the Morrigan's been kind of quiet while you've been working with other deities? Do you find that she interferes with you working with other deities, or she seemed all right about it for the most part?
She peeks in sometimes, and she I don't know, it feels like she's pretty much okay with it, but it's been like maybe one or two that she's been sort of a little bit interfering with, but not much. It's mostly like she's just making sure everything's fine, basically. I don't know how to explain it. It's just like she's just like in the background watching, and she hasn't really like disturbed any of my work with the others. It's more like it feels like she wants me to do it. It feels like she wants me to kind of work with others and explore that sort of thing. And yeah, I think that's the goal with the sort of lesson, I think.
Yeah. I found she can be quite possessive if she doesn't really want you to work with a particular deity. Like I always ask if other deities show up, such as in the case of Hades, who Hades wouldn't leave me alone for a while. And I was like, does Morrigan know about this? Like, has she sanctioned this? Because if not, like
you're in trouble.
I'm not bringing that kind of trouble into my box. Like, did you ask?
Yeah.
Hey, random. And yeah, so the thing that you've talked about with the Morrigan being very full on to begin with and has then gone silent is something that I've seen happen to a lot of people who work with the Morrigan. And it's happened to me over and over again. She does these cycles of being a bit more full on and then being very reserved. And I sort of try and warn people about it. As I'm like, okay, I know you're getting all these crazy messages right now, but she might go quiet on you. She might go like silent on you because she's the silent watcher and she does this. And some people get really offended when I tell them this. And I'm like, I'm not telling you to be like, you know, this is your experiences are not valid or something. I'm telling you because I've seen this happen to a lot of people and people freak out. How did you feel about it when she first started sort of going quiet? Was that like nerve-wracking for you or weird to you?
I panicked. I was like, doesn't she like me anymore? I was like, what is happening? I was feeling crazy. I was feeling, was all of that before just like fantasy? Like, you know, I really felt crazy. And I was asking my friend that is working a lot with the Morgan too about this. And I felt like, that, you know, I asked him why she would do that in that case, and he was like, maybe she's just giving you a lesson or something, you know. So I was a bit calmed down after talking to him, but yeah, initially I was panicking. I was getting crazy, really, thinking that everything that happened was fantasy, and really weird feeling. And so I was starting to trying to contacting her, like meanwhile I was like, please answer me, like what's going on, can you please tell me? Nothing, silence, nada. So
yeah, she does teach you some interesting lessons in silence, and I think it's a interesting experience to go through. I think it's something perhaps even necessary because we get so used to how full of chatter our lives are that we don't really tend to sit with silence very much when we think about it. Like there's always noise in our lives. We can always turn the TV on, we can always turn the internet on, we can always have a conversation with somebody, and the amounts of time where we actually sit with silence and the lessons that we can learn from there are probably fewer and far between than they've ever been. And it makes me wonder, like, how much of that is the Morrigan bringing in, like, I am the silent watcher and I have told you what you need to know, so go do it, and I'll be in the back watching silently.
Yeah, exactly. And and on the speak of silent watcher, it was so funny. It's like in that period, I was like feeling crazy and stuff. Actually, like my brother was going to pick me up one day, and in his car, like directly when I stepped into it, it was this song, I am watching you, every step you take, every move you make, you know, that song. Yeah, and I was like, okay, that's confirmation, thank you. Like, you're still there. But yeah, very much the silent watcher. Yeah,
absolutely. So how did you begin your journey with the Morrigan?
It started out with a dream, actually. I was sort of spiritually disconnected in every way, and I was just feeling like there's nothing, basically. And in that period, like, I was just having this really vibrant, really sort of, how to say, very real dream, so to say. And it was a bit scary. It was actually quite scary. And it was just feeling so real. And I was waking up and I remembered the whole thing, like every single detail, everything. And that's sort of how it started there. She introduced herself in that dream, basically. And like, I didn't know like who she was at all in the beginning. So I was like waking up, and I got her name in the dream, and, you know, Morrigan. And I was like, Morrigan? What kind of name is that? Yeah, Morrigan? I really didn't know. So yeah, and I was really freaked out about it, and it was just so much information, really, and a lot to take in, very many symbols as well. And and I was totally unfamiliar with all of this because I was growing up Christian, really, and the things that I knew of was, you know, the cross and those sort of symbols. I didn't know any others, so it was very overwhelming to be getting all of that. Yeah,
I can imagine that is pretty overwhelming, because if you come from a Christian background, there's not a lot of strong warrior female deity energy within Christianity. So to come from that to full-on Morrigan energy must be quite something.
Yeah, it was. And, you know, like in the beginning, after that, I was just thinking, oh, this was just like a fabulous dream. It wasn't anything else. I was trying to sort of, you know, wave it away, or how to say it in English, sort of just sweep it under the rug. But I was still affected. I was still going around thinking about it like weeks after. And sometimes I would just like disappear like in my own thoughts. And my boyfriend at the time, he was like, what are you thinking about? Like ever since that dream, you've been acting weird. And I was like, well, it's just that. And then he wanted to know about it. And so he was a bit freaked out about that because he's hardcore Christian. So he was like, that's a demon, you know? But I was like, no, I wasn't feeling that at all. And a couple of days after, actually, I met like a new friend, which had tattoos on his arm, and he was like having 2 ladies on it. And I was like, okay, that's nice. Who are they? Like, I was thinking that maybe that was his mom when she was young or whatever. Like, yeah. And he's like, that's Morrigan and that's Kerrigan. And I'm like, what name did you say? Like, what name? And so that's how it started. That's how I started learning about her. And yeah, it's
gone from there.
Yeah. And I was starting watching your, I was actually searching because after he said that, you know, her name was Morrigan, I was like, okay, so this is real. This is something that is really, so I was starting searching on it on Google and everything. And that's how I actually found your videos talking about Morrigan. So thank you for being out there. Because I, at the time, was totally lost, totally confused. And yeah, and you guided me in so many ways. So, and you know, you weren't only talking about your own experiences, you were actually talking about facts. Like, not fact, but like in the, you know, what's in the books and the legends and, you know, the stuff. So that was really, really like kind of comforting to me. Like, you know, you had all the parts of it. So I was like, great. So I followed you.
Yeah. when I well, the Morrigan has always been with me, but I didn't know who she was. Like, I always called her Mother, and I've always spoken to Mother from like a very young age. And when I found out who Mother was, I was like, I don't know who the Morrigan is. And I was really perturbed by it because I'm a student of history, and like the only sort of element of history that I hadn't really researched was the Celts. Like, I knew all about the Norse myth and the history, and I knew about like all the Greek myth and the Egyptian myth. And I was like, have I like avoided this myth accidentally on purpose? So when I found out about who the Morrigan was, it then meant that I could then delve into the myth, like not go in with a preconceived idea of who she was, but rather discover her. And I wonder if she does that to a lot of people who she turns up with. Like, she likes that element of mystery, and you don't know who I am, and you have to sort of push past what other people are telling you about the goddess Morrigan, because you had someone who was calling her demonic or whatever.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, I had people being like, isn't she a bit, you know, violent? And are you sure? I had that kind of reaction. And when I found out about the Morrigan, there wasn't a lot on YouTube. There was Laura Daligan, who's a lifeline, but I think that was about it on YouTube at the time. And I need more information than this. And I was like looking for information, and in the end, it ended up being me putting the information out as I experienced it and researched it as well, just because it wasn't as affluent as it is now. There's a lot more now than there was, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah, and thank you for that. Really, from the bottom of my heart. Really. Yeah, but you know, she is like that. She wants people that are involved with her to learn about her, like in their, like, how to say, own sort of space, and try and search information, trying to talk to her, to interact with her, trying to, I think that's a big lesson that she kind of tries to teach, really. So
and as a student of history, I've always been taught to argue with the text as well. So the minute that, like, I I love mythology. I do. I think it's incredibly interesting and enlightening, but there's a lot of problems with mythology, particularly Celtic mythology, which is not written down by the Celts. It's written down by Christians who don't know the entire story and have their own agenda and all the rest of it. I always advise people, I'm like, yeah, absolutely, go read the myth and see what you can glean from it, but kind of try and look beyond the myth. Because you kind of have to look beyond the kind of demonization of this goddess. You really do. You've got to look past what the Christians are telling you about a female war goddess, because they might have an agenda.
Yeah, exactly. And I just feel it's such a shame that it has come to that the old gods are so demonized as they are nowadays. It is beginning to coming back, I feel. I don't know how you feel about that, but it feels like it's coming more and more. People having experiences with these different old gods. And
I don't know if it's more people who are having these experiences, or if it's just that we have greater access of information for people to talk about it than we ever had before. Because when I sort of became more public in the beginning, I was part of a forum, and I sort of looked for people in my local area, and I found a lot of people back then. There were a lot of people on the forums, and there were a lot of people who would go to private meetups and things. And I actually went to my first, so it wasn't a coven thing, because it was just like a group gathering for Imolg 1 year. And there was a good 20, 30 people back then, and that was the early 2000s. So the first time I ever went and sat in a group ritual with people. That wasn't the Morrigan specifically. The Morrigan and goddesses like her have become more revealed, maybe. I feel like in more recent years, you've had a lot of an upswing in attention to gods and goddesses who deal with elements of a turbulent world, I think. And because the world we're living in right now is so turbulent, these gods and goddesses do come to the fore because there is a need for them. Like, people turn to gods and goddesses of war because there is more war and more threat of war now than they feel there has been in their lifetime, whether or not that's a true, that's a truth or not. Maybe it's just because it's encroaching more and more on our doorsteps now than ever before.
Yeah, could that definitely be like that, as you say, definitely.
And I've seen an upswing of interest in goddesses like Kali, and the goddess Hel has had a lot of attention lately, which is, they have similar themes. You know, they all deal in death to one degree or another, but they have very different energies. Hel and Kali, and then indeed the Morrigan. Kali's perhaps a bit closer to the Morrigan, because they're both quite fierce and warlike and take no nonsense. But I wonder how much of the attention and the upswing of interest is because the world needs these gods and goddesses right now.
Yeah, I believe so too. And and I've seen, like, here in Sweden, it has actually, like, increased as well. Like, the community, pagan community, was very, very small, like, in the beginning. But I've been seeing it, like, grow and grow now. So it's it is quite interesting, I have to say. And a lot of people have encountered Loki, a lot of people have encountered Freya a lot, and me as well included. So, and that was an experience in itself.
Yeah, we can talk about that if you like. I've had, oh goodness, Freya and Loki getting involved with regards to making me move home. They were both involved with that, and I was like, what is going on? There aren't normally this many gods anywhere near me, never, like, on a permanent, like on a more present basis, because I can conduit quite easily with other gods for my work. But in terms of, like, present, it's just Bave the Morrigan usually. And then occasionally another god or goddess will come in with her permission. But with regards to all of that change, it's like she was like, let's get a team on side. Let's have a team on side. Let's have a team up. And I was like, what is going on? Like, yeah.
Oh gosh.
So how have you found working with either Freya or Loki? well, shall we say Freya? How have those energies have been?
Quite interesting. She is very intense, I would say. She wants to teach me a lot. Like, she's really like wanting to teach a lot. And yeah, and now I dropped my line. What was the question again? Sorry.
how have you been working with, and how does it feel to have been influenced, if you like, with Freya?
I've been working with her more than kind of getting to know her, really, and getting to know the ways that, like, the Norse sort of ways of doing things. For example, like divination, she's been teaching me a lot about runes and talking about that. And yeah, that's sort of how I work with her so far. She's been giving me little quotes now and then when I kind of needed it. If that makes sense. Do you know what I mean with that? Yeah.
Have you found her energy to be fairly similar to Morrigan's?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, it's still different, sort of, but it's still, they have similarities. They're both quite intense. They're quite fierce, and and but I feel that Freya is a bit more. She really kind of gets what she wants. For example, like if I worked one time, I was doing like a spell, and I was asking her for her help with doing that spell. And you know, never before, like when I worked with Morgan, she's ever like, you know, done something physically to me more than kind of maybe like my energy has been a bit like rumble up. But that's sort of it. But with Freya, she's been quite physical. Like literally, I've never cut myself ever in my life. Never. And literally 1 hour after I was doing this spell, I cut my finger and I bled quite.
Oh yeah.
Quite much.
Oh yeah. Right. So working with Freya, how I first started working with Freya is I made a spell set for Freya because somebody had requested it. And the first time I make any Nordic spell set for any Nordic god, I will cut myself.
Oh, really?
Not on purpose. It will just happen. Like, and because they all demand like a little blood sacrifice thing. And I'm like, I'm fine. I've come to expect it. That's cool. Freya is every single time I make anything for Freya, whether it's a, you know, tiny little votive, cut that finger, or I will cut it for you. And it's every single time I've made anything for Freya, I've ended up with a cut somewhere.
Really?
And that has happened every single time. And it's quite funny because when Freya was heavily involved with changing my life, I was like, oh, and I'm bleeding. And then Morrigan was getting really annoyed with me, and because like Freya was, well, not annoyed with me, but annoyed because Freya was having such an impact. And Morrigan was like, right, I want blood too. And I heard that and I was like, what? And then like half an hour later, like my monthly cycle started, and I was like, oh, for God's sake. It's like one-upmanship. It's like, can I bleed anymore? Can I not? That's great. That's, yeah.
Bloodbath.
I don't want to. And that's actually when I made the video about Morrigan and blood and sacrifice, actually, because I think that was coming off the back of that happening. So
yeah, that is so funny. But yeah. So that's sort of what the difference is between them, I feel, anyways. I don't know. Morrigan hasn't, like, as far as I have perceived or whatever, she hasn't really craved blood from me in that sense.
Okay. You might get there.
No. The thing is with me, like, I'm so scared of it. Like, you have no idea. Like, I do not want to harm myself. I feel it's so scary. But yeah, it's coming, basically, I think. But as you said, but I hope not, sort of. But yeah.
I found that Freya was more interested in aesthetics and the way things look as well. When I was meditating with her for regards to her spell set, she had very clear-cut color themes that she wanted involved. Some of the gods do that, and they like interfere, and they're like, I want this and I want that, but not to this degree. Like Freya was like, I want that color, and there has to be gold in there. There has to be gold in there, and more gold. And I was like, okay, all right. And there was a lot of that. And then when I was meditating with her for the first time, a lot of her thoughts at the point were like around the idea of what beauty is within modern women. And she was like, when did beauty become frailty? Freya was on a rant when I was in a meditation with her. She was like, strength is beautiful. Strength. And I was like, okay, you're preaching to the choir, I know. She was like, when did it become beautiful to be frail and vulnerable and weak, and rather than like a shield maiden style? And I was like, I agree. Don't smite me. I agree. So she was definitely more interested in kind of like the maybe that's why you feel she's more physical, because she's quite interested in like the tangible, like the way things look and appear. So
excuse me, my phone is going off. Give me 1 second.
Hey to everybody who's watching. I hope you guys are all good.
Sorry about that. I should have turned it off.
And how has Loki's energies been for you as they've been?
Those have been quite interesting. He's quite a jokester. He likes sort of like being a little bit, how do I say like in English? It's so hard translating it sometimes. He's been sarcastic, sort of, in some ways, but still sort of like lovingly sarcastic. So he's not been mean or anything, but I can just like hear comments like here and there. If I'm doing like a spell, if I'm doing sort of a ritual or anything, he's just always commenting, commenting, and it's like. I'm like, stop sometimes. But
the thing that I love about Loki is his absolute refusal to be pinned down. Like he refuses to be defined. If you try and define him in any way, and this is very more organic actually, because the Morrigan does this too. The minute you think you have a handle on the understanding of them, they'll shapeshift. On purpose. They're like, oh, you think you know something? Whoop. And that's like, okay, and it's that being thrown off balance, that need to reevaluate what you've learned and then see things from a different perspective, a different angle, and reevaluate and things like that. So that's the interesting part of Loki's energies. I haven't worked with him directly because I've had enough chaos recently.
You do.
And he was definitely involved in creating said chaos. I know he was, along with Freya. So, but I'm like, I need some more roots first before we get into any of that, and before we get into any more chaotic work.
And he is sort of like that. He makes you question stuff, and he makes you sort of question stuff, and be very. A little bit sneaky sometimes, I would feel. But in his ways.
Yeah, we were talking about Loki in more depth the other day with Random and Asbjorn, and they have a lot more experience than me, because I just have some strange experiences with him where a lot of them, I had 3 or 4 men hitting on me, like trying to get me to sleep with them, hitting on me, and they were all followers of Loki, all of them. And I was like, what is going on? And that's strange. Apparently that's not run of the mill, although Loki obviously has a very interesting sexual appetite according to the myth.
He is quite flirty. He could be, I haven't had much experience with him at all either, but it's like it comes and goes. And so
okay, cool. So what does your day-to-day spiritual practice look like when you're connecting with deity? Do you connect with them every day? Do you do a little ritual every day? How does that look for you?
as for now, currently, I feel more sort of connected towards Freya, and so I have actually made a little altar for her. I still have my Morrigan altar as well, and so I do tend to light a candle every day, at least, trying to, and sometimes giving some offerings like incense or whiskey to Morgan, or maybe I'll put a flower or something on Freya's altar. So that's sort of what I'm doing as a daily little thing. But also sometimes I'm trying to sit down and talk to them, because the thing is, as I view it, it's a relationship. It's it's a friendship basically, and you need to nurture it. And so trying to sort of go through the veil of it, like trying to connect with them, talk to them for a bit, maybe get some good quotes or lessons, which I've been getting sometimes, both from Morgan, both from Freya, and also sometimes some other, deities have been popping up, even though I'm trying to maybe connect with Freya, for example, but then others have been coming in and giving me some really good stuff to think about. For example, I had Ganesh coming in, and I had Lakshmi at the same time, which I never ever worked with or thought about. And so yeah, it's like sometimes I do that if I feel like I need to connect and just say hi. Basically, as I said, it's a relationship that you have to nurture from both sides. So,
and those energies must be vastly different. When you have energies of say Ganesh coming through, that must be a vastly different energy.
Yeah, and those energies were, I would say, they were very, very like sort of soft, not as I wouldn't say that the others were harsh, but it's like sort of a soft energy to it, and it's very loving, like lots of love. And yeah, it has been quite different. I don't say that the other ones are not loving as well. They are, but in their own sort of harsh sort of ways. Yeah, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Does it ever feel a bit overwhelming when there are so many different energies, and kind of, because I know some people have actually felt bombarded by lots and lots of different god and goddess energies. Is it ever overwhelming for you?
Yeah, sometimes, but it all depends on where I am mentally. Like, the thing is, if I'm feeling like happy, go jolly, like don't have anything else to worry about, like I would feel it's okay, and it doesn't, it's not that chaotic. But if I'm feeling like a bit down, or if I'm feeling stressed out, it could be like, oh no, not that. I cannot take this. Like, and then I would shut down. So it's like I have periods, really, where I just feel drained energetically, and that is something that I'm working on. And maybe that is because I have a lot of ladies around me. I don't know, but sometimes I do feel a bit, yeah.
What's the best way of dealing with that, do you think? Do you have like a grounding ritual you go through when you're feeling that way?
Yeah, well, sort of. It's not an elaborate ritual, really. It's more maybe like lighting some candles, have some incense, trying to kind of meditate and just kind of think through things. And sometimes I can ask for help, like my guys. I can ask them for help, ask them for help, I mean, and just be like, please sort of cleanse me a bit, because that is sort of, I feel that is what I need. I need to get rid of all the energies. And so I tend to use sage a lot for that, and just kind of smudge myself and my place, and kind of recharge and kind of, how to say, nil myself. Or is that the right term in English?
Yeah, I know. We know what you mean. Really good.
Yeah. Like reset myself basically, and then I'm good to go again. Because when you're getting all of those energies, it's really kind of building up sometimes for me, I feel. And so I just need to get rid of it. Yeah. It's not over.
Do you feel that the Morrigan has taught you any peculiar lessons? So she's taught you lessons that you really weren't expecting, or you really weren't looking for, and they've kind of been odd maybe, or weird, or just unexpected lessons with the Morrigan?
I feel that maybe this silent period has actually taught me a lot, because it has kind of put my trust in her at the test, basically. And that is something that I struggle with, trust. I have a lot of like trust issues when it comes to a lot of things. And I think that is one of the biggest, actually. And she can just go silent, and I should be just feeling that she is there. I need to trust her. I need to, yeah. You understand what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I didn't have too much trouble with the silent thing because I tend to do that myself. Like, I'll have times when I'm just hermiting off in the world, and I don't mean to do it. I just do. I was just like, oh, I've just gone into my little cave, and then I stick my head out, and I'm like, oh yeah, I should probably interact with the world again a bit more. So to me, it was just kind of like my cycle. So I was like, well, you know, I'm used to me being like that. So the silent and then really in your really involved thing didn't worry me too much. But she's given me some interesting lessons with regards to, recently it's been like an anger lesson, like, why should you be angry? And we've been having that lesson, so that has been fun. That's been you know, does the situation merit anger or not? And I've gone into like meditations thinking this will be a nice relaxing meditation. No. We're going to find out what it means when the Morrigan's wrathful. And feel what the Morrigan feels when she desires wrath for a situation. So then we'll better understand what wrath feels like. And I was like, really? Do we have to? Okay. And it was such a strange, I mean, it was a powerful lesson because it was a lesson in not letting every little thing bother you ultimately. And gosh, it was a weird one. It was a strange lesson.
Yeah, but I mean, like, she tends to kind of, the people that she has contact with and stuff like that, she tends to trying to make them, like, how to say, like, put armor on them, basically, and trying to build them.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, yeah. And also, like, not only like in the mundane things, she's also trying to teach. I feel that she's very much a teacher of the spiritual things, like the magical. She's been teaching me actually like a lot of like different spells and what to do and why. Sometimes she can be a little bit like when I ask her, okay, so why do I have to do this? Like because I don't. She can just give me direction. Do that. Do that. Do that. And you use that and that and that. And I'm like, why? Just fucking do it. And I'm like, okay.
Well, she does use magic in her war, a lot of her war mythology. Like, she rains fire and blood on people, rather than, like, that's one of the things she does during wartime, and that's direct correlation to magic rather than physical warfare. So I can see that. I could see the Morrigan getting involved in, like, this is the spell work you need to do. I have to confess, I've never even thought about asking her for what spells I should be doing, because generally speaking, I just do it and get on with it and don't even think about it. But I might have to do that and see what happens. I'll be like, do you want to teach me a spell? She'll probably be like, no, get on with it. Like, all right.
Well, you could try.
I might try just to see what happens. She'll probably be like, no, you know how to do this, get on with it. And I'll be like, oh.
Exactly.
But I want to, no, just get on with it. Like, okay. It'd probably be something like that. But I might try that and see what happens. It'd be interesting.
Yeah, do that. Because, for me, I think that you and me, we come from a little bit, like, different. You started out in Wicca, didn't you? Like, a little bit.
Initiated into Wicca or anything. But when I was coming up, I was reading anything I could get my hands on, and the majority of what was available and is still available now is Wiccan books. Like, a lot of Wiccan books were available back then. So I started off practicing within those confines when I very first started, although some of it really bothered me and I didn't like it. It's like the 4 watchtowers. which is not just a Wiccan way of doing things, but when you ritual spellcast, you call on the 4 watchtowers. And I really didn't like the way that everyone was doing the 4 watchtowers. Witch Towers, that might be interesting. The 4 Witch Towers, new book by Joey Morris.
Exactly.
And I used trees.
Yeah.
For north, south, east, and west. And I was just like, no, I'm going to do it the way that feels right for me. And I'm going to just call on trees and bring tree energy into the circle, because that felt more natural to me. So I wasn't fully initiated or anything like that. And I was always a little bit argumentative with the text. Like I don't follow guide. Well, when someone puts religious rules in front of me and like, you must follow this, 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 and this. And I'm like,
no way.
Nope. So I sort of absorbed a lot of that information, and I always say that I will be grateful to Wicca and the people who wrote the Wiccan books, although some of them were witchcraft books, because it gave me a stepping stone to the rest of my spiritual journey, which is still largely undefinable, which is how I prefer it, because it doesn't necessarily fall into one box.
Yeah, it's the same here. I don't really label myself. I sort of like use what works and stuff that she actually tells me to do. So it's like, and I haven't, like, when I was like younger, I was looking into, like, I was interested in, like, you know, this sort of stuff because I felt it around me, but I just didn't know sort of what it was. I was doing like sort of pagan things, and then I looked it up like on net, and I was like seeing all of this Wicca things, and as you say, a lot of rules. And I was like, not gonna do that. There's no rules of doing stuff. And then I was like, just kind of putting it off and be disconnected and be like, yeah. But I think that maybe she's not doing that maybe to you, or she's maybe doing that to me because I'm so like sort of inexperienced in sort of those things. And so I think that's why she's giving me those inputs. Maybe, I don't know, but. Yeah, it's interesting.
It may just be as much as getting you to trust your own intuition, because with a lot of my spell work and the way that I create things, I never doubt what I'm doing.
Yeah.
When someone wants a spell set for me and they're like, just go do whatever, and I'm like, all right, okay, fine, I'll go do whatever, and I don't ever second guess what I'm doing, because I connect with deity and I feel how it feels and I feel the energies out. And I do that with regards to spell work and all of that sort of thing in general. So I just go with what feels right in the moment, and I don't doubt it. So maybe there's an element of her pulling you over, you know, don't doubt yourself, come on, that kind of lesson.
Yeah, I definitely, that is sort of what I feel as well, and have been feeling for quite some time, that she's, as you said, teaching me that to trust myself. And as I said, trust issues in the beginning, and everything when it comes to spirituality, like I don't really have people around me that are doing these sort of things, so I feel sort of like lonely in that sort of way. And it is really hard to trust, because when it comes like from all of these different people, well, just fantasy, like from my boyfriend, ex-boyfriend now, but I mean, like, he was just like disregarding it in the beginning. It's like just fantasies, like, no, it's just fantasies. And I was like, seriously, like, no, this isn't fantasies. But when like all of this, like other influences come to you, it makes you doubt your ability. And especially like for, you know, an isolated person like me, you don't have any like people around that are doing that. So yeah.
I am 90% solitary. I was lucky in the beginning of when I was, well, not in the beginning, because I'd been reading a long time before, but when I moved out to go to university, I went to university in Canterbury at first, and there's a big pagan scene down there, and there was like a pagan shop, like a physical pagan shop in England, and I was like, ugh. And so I was lucky that I could talk to people at that point, because at that point I was coming into contact with some really unfortunate stuff. There were people who are like, you're not allowed to be a Wiccan if you've not been initiated by someone else who's a Wiccan. And you run into things like that and you're like, That face, like, is this a thing, or are you just being an ass? Like, and fortunately, I did have people at that point that I could talk to. Not every day or anything, but in terms of practicing, I practice solo, and I always have, because I think, again, being told how to practice by someone else doesn't sit well with me. So, Hi, B, you've come in right at the last minute because we're about to wrap up.
Hi, Bea. Yeah.
Okay, are there any questions from people who are watching? I can take one or two questions before we wrap up. I don't think there will be, because people have been kind of quiet today. Maybe it's the difference in time. I thought the difference in time would be better, but apparently not.
Well, people can watch it afterwards. It's like,
yeah. Okay. So I think we're about time, because I have to go and let Asbjørn do his work, because we're sharing a laptop right now. So, so I think, I think the chat's a bit quiet today. So we'll wrap it up there. And I want to say thank you so much for joining me today and talking about spirituality.
Thank you for having me. It was so fun.
And go check Kenzie out. You can see all of her links as well as all of my links below. They're already there because I made sure before we started this live stream. And you can check us both out at the links below if you want to hear more from either of us about the Morrigan or otherwise. There is plenty of stuff for you guys to go check out. So thank you for joining us today, guys, and see you next time.
Bye.